What if a part of your past started revealing your future? Would you read on or hide it away again? In the dim, cavernous silence of the town library, shadows clung to the ornate shelves like restless spirits. The flickering fluorescence overhead cast intermittent pools of sickly light that hovered over the spines of countless forgotten tomes. Ava moved quietly amid them, her footsteps muffled by the worn carpet, eyes flickering nervously beneath thick-rimmed glasses. The soft rustling of pages was her only companion, yet somewhere beyond the rows of books, laughter erupted a sharp, cruel slice through the quiet night. Her neck craned subtly toward the source. Near the back corner, a small group of teenagers congregated, faces illuminated by the harsh glow of their smartphones. The cadence of their voices carried easily, mocking and biting, each word a dagger thrown without mercy. "Look at her," one voice sneered, cold and sharp. "Still stuck in the stacks, daydreaming like some forgotten ghost." Another chuckled, adding with venom, "Maybe she thinks hiding in books makes her different, special." Newsflashes just invisible. The words fell like rain on dry earth, sinking deep into Ava's chest, lodging there with slow-burning pain. She felt the familiar ache rise, a shame, denial, and a yearning to disappear. Her fingers tightened around a fragile paper slip, her library card, the sole emblem of a life she barely dared claim. The card, frayed at the edges and stained by years of wear, symbolized not freedom but confinement, a reminder of a past she struggled to face. Ava's breaths became shallow, the sound of her own heartbeat a deafening drum in the silence that had suddenly engulfed her. Every laugh and snide comment felt like sparks igniting tinder beneath her skin, setting a flame of fear she kept carefully hidden. The flickering lights overhead sputtered and hummed with unstable energy, shadows shifting like restless memories. Nearby, an ancient grandfather clock stood sentinel, its pendulum swinging slowly, inexorably marking time, each tick a grim reminder of moments slipping away, of reckonings unavoidable. The group's leader, a boy with sharp features and a cruel smile, seemed to savor their torment. His voice dropped low but clear, a whisper meant only for Ava's ears. "Why don't you just give up? It's easier that way." A sudden gust from the door pushed papers along the floor, sending a spiral of dust motes swirling in their wake. Ava's gaze dropped to the ground where the dust settled like the weight of years pressing her into the shadows. Her lips parted slightly, a silent plea, but no words emerged. The library walls seemed to lean in, a suffocating embrace of books and silence. Fighting the urge to flee, she retreated slowly down the aisle, her layered sweater brushing against the rough spines. Each step was a clash of defiance and despair. Her eyes caught a glimmer between two heavy volumes, a corner of a dusty, cobwebbed diary tucked away on a forgotten shelf. It called to something deep within, a locked chamber of memories, fragile yet pulsating with unspoken truths. As she reached out hesitantly, the library lights flickered violently, plunging the hall into momentary darkness before sputtering back to life. A whisper rustled through the silence, just beyond hearing, a breath of a voice from nowhere, curling around her like a question. Ava's slender fingers closed around the diary, its ancient leather cover cold and thick, an unwelcome touch that spoke of both dread and longing. She pulled it close to her chest, the shadows around her thickening but no longer threatening. The clock struck midnight, its chime lingering, a solemn herald of time reckoning and of confrontations yet to come. The library, once a refuge, now felt like a stage vast and echoing, ripe with secrets and lurking fears. In that suspended, fragile moment, Ava's eyes filled with a cautious spark, fear entwined with the first trace of resolve. The flickering lights above danced unpredictably, mirroring the trembling hope that stirred beneath her guarded gaze. The scene faded not into resolution but into a breath held tight, a pause between darkness and dawn, as Ava braced herself to unravel the past best left untouched. The towering shelves closed in as Ava retreated deeper into the sanctuary of the library's rarest collection. The faint flicker of overhead lights rhythmically pulsed, casting oscillating shadows on the spine-lined walls, a visual echo of her fracturing composure. A heavy quiet settled around her, broken only by the distant ticking of the grandfather clock in the main hall, each measured strike a relentless reminder of time passing, of moments she could neither reclaim nor rewrite. Ava inhaled slowly, the cold air carrying the faint, musty scent of neglected pages and forgotten stories. Her fingers absently traced the edges of a deeply worn book, its surface pocked and scarred from age and neglect. The scent of old leather and dust, somehow comforting, anchored her amid the swirl of emotions churning beneath her veneer. Each beat of her heart was heavy-laden with shame, vulnerability, and a sense of invisibility that no one in the vast library seemed to battle but her. The teenager's mocking laughter echoed in her ears, colder than the draft slipping through the cracked windowpanes. Their words, cruel and sharp-edged, reverberated throughout the cavernous space, igniting a dull, simmering ache in the pit of her stomach. She had spent years hiding here among stories, histories, and quiet moments of solitude, longing for peace yet forever chased by this unseen torment. Ava sat on a creaky old wooden stool beneath the flickering bulbs, the shadows flickering over her features, highlighting the quiet lines of wear and worry etched into her face. She pulled the oversized cardigan tighter around her shoulders, a futile attempt to shield herself from the cold bitterness creeping in from both without and within. The weight of every judgment, every isolated moment of dismissal pressed on her chest like stone. Her eyes flickered to a dusty corner of the room where a forgotten shelf lay piled unevenly with the detritus of time, a place seldom ventured into. Drawn by invisible threads, she rose and filed through the clutter, fingertips brushing against the coarse bindings and brittle pages. There, half covered in cobwebs, a leather-bound diary awaited, its cover cracked and pale with age. The sight caused a flicker of something indefinable, a hesitancy mingled with curiosity. She reached out and lifted the diary carefully from its resting place. It was heavier than she expected, the weight of years etched into its worn leather, the surface mottled with specks of dust and time. Ava retreated to a corner nestled amid the towering shelves, reverently opening the diary. The pages, yellowed but intact, bore the unmistakable marks of a child's handwriting, untamed and raw, a stark contrast to her present guarded self. As the library lights flickered overhead, casting distorted shadows across the inked words, a cold shiver traced her spine. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the tremors of shame and defeat interlaced with a subtle, fragile spark of something else, a hesitant reach toward the unwritten chapters still waiting in the shadows of her mind. The grandfather clock chimed again, its resonance vibrating through the still air. Ava's breath caught. The moment hung suspended between darkness and the faintest glimmer of revelation. Her eyes darted to the page, where a line written in a child's tremulous scrawl stared back a name, a date, a whisper of secrets long concealed. The library seemed to hold its breath, the rain beginning softly against the window, a somber prelude to the journey about to unfold. Shadows curled around the edges of the room, alive with possibility, menace, and the haunting promise of forgotten truths ready to resurface. Ava closed the diary slowly, the lock of her past now cracked open. The flickering lights wavered once more, and in the brief, hanging silence, a faint whisper brushed her eara sound just beyond comprehension, yet impossibly intimate. The scene narrowed down to the close-up of Ava's face, eyes wide, brimming with uncertainty and a spark of resolve as the screen faded silently to black. The stillness of the library was a brittle thing, fracturing beneath the weight of Ava's hesitant breath as she traced her way through the darkened aisles. Dust particles drifted lazily in the narrow beams of flickering light overhead like tiny specters of the past herself she struggled to keep at bay. Each footstep echoed softly, a solitary rhythm in the vast, suffocating quiet that threatened to pull her under. At the far end, where shelves bowed beneath the weight of forgotten stories, a neglected alcove beckoned, a place of shadows and silence. Her fingers brushed away decades of dust and cobwebs on a small, leather-bound diary, its cracked spine begging to be opened. The book, heavy with years unspoken, reverberated with the tremulous pulse of secrets folded tightly within. Her hands trembled as the cover creaked open, revealing pages as fragile as memories. The flickering library lights cast a somber glow, their unsteady illumination painting shadows that danced like apparitions across the yellowed parchment. The words inscribed within spelled out fragments of a childhood she barely remembered, a time of innocence slowly swallowed by shadows. A low hum seemed to rise from the diary's depths, melding with the distant ticking of the grandfather clock, each measured chime a toll counting down to a reckoning long deferred. Ava's pulse quickened, every nerve alight with a mixture of dread and desperate curiosity. Her eyes flicked to an inscription in a child's delicate scrawler name intertwined with another's, a whispered promise made beneath the veil of youth. The letters wavered as if alive, their ink freshly bleeding with ominous significance. She ran a trembling finger along the lines, the weight of unacknowledged truths pressing in. Suddenly, the lights above sputtered, flickering violently, and the room plunged briefly into darkness. A whisper hovered, just beyond hearing, a breath of sound that slithered into her ear and vanished. Ava's heart hammered wildly as the familiar yellow light snapped back on, but the diary had shifted in her hands. Where before the pages were still, now a new entry sprawled boldly across the Pagea passage she had never written, detailing moments from her recent life in unnerving detail. The air thickened, the old walls leaning closer, as if the library itself waited, breath held taut between past and present. Ava's gaze met her own reflection in the darkened glass of a nearby window, eyes wide, unblinking, confronting a storm of fear and fierce determination. The grandfather clock struck the hour with a sonorous finality, its echo reverberating through the cavernous room. In that moment, Ava closed the diary slowly, sealing away not just the fragile pages but a fragment of herself long denied. A shiver ran down her spine as she stood amidst the dance of shadows and flickering lights, a solitary figure poised between the known and the abyss. The library exhaled, ancient and inscrutable, the air pregnant with promises of revelation. The camera lingered on Ava's face, painted with muted colors of fear, resolve, and the trembling first steps toward confrontation as the scene faded into a breathless pause, a fragile gateway opening onto the dark journey ahead. The dim light of the library's late-night hours cast long, wavering shadows across the empty aisles. Ava sat alone at a small wooden table, the ancient diary spread open before her like a fragile portal into a forgotten world. Her glasses caught the flicker of the overhead fluorescence, feeble, erratic, like the uncertain rhythm of her thoughts. Outside, a cold wind wept through the town, causing the bare branches beyond the window to rattle like ghostly fingers against the glass. She traced the faded handwriting with cautious fingers, the absence of fear faint but unmistakable beneath layers of anxiety. The diary's initial entries were innocent, carefree tales of childhood games, schoolyard secrets, moments laced with laughter and light. A strange comfort stirred, the nostalgic tenderness a balm to her silently racing mind. The clock's slow, sonorous ticking mingled with the distant hum of the night, each stroke a reminder that time was slipping, and with it, the fractured pieces of Ava's past. As the wind howled, the flickering lights danced erratically, bathing the room in an uneasy rhythm as if the walls themselves were breathing alive, watchful. Ava's eyes lingered on a description of a summer day long ago, the warmth of sunlit grass almost palpable through the ink. She whispered the words aloud, the sound fragile but alive. We ran through fields of wildflowers, chasing the fading light. A brief, fleeting smile softened the lines around her eyes, shattering the veneer of self-imposed solitude. Yet, tightening her grip on the diary, the shadows crept inward, memories threatening to unravel the fragile piece. The room seemed to pulsate, was vibrant with unseen presence, histories not yet laid to rest. The diary shifted under her touch, pages unnaturally flipping to reveal new entries, words she didn't remember writing, events unfolding in strange, distorted detail. A birthday party she never recalled, a voice whispering secrets in the dark, footsteps echoing down an empty corridor. The air thickened, shadows deepened, and Ava inhaled sharply, the cold seep of dread pooling in her stomach. "What is this?" she murmured, voice almost swallowed by the library's heavy air. The ancient grandfather clock struck midnight, its deep tolling resonant and eerie, filling the cavernous space with unrelenting insistence. At that moment, the overhead lights flickered violently before plunging the room into darkness. A whisper brushed her EARA phrase in a voice both familiar and foreign, chilling and intimate. Her breath stuttered, heart pounding, fierce and wild. She reached blindly for the diary, its surface growing inexplicably warm beneath her trembling hands. Pages turned on their own, revealing a haunting entry, a detailed account of her own recent actions, written as if by an unseen observer with unnerving precision. The sudden flicker returned, lights casting the room into sharp relief, revealing Ava's expression a mixture of fear, confusion, and a budding resolve. The diary was no longer mere memory. It was a living, breathing enigma drawing her deeper into its shadowed depths. She locked eyes with the grandfather clock, its pendulum a hypnotic pendulum swaying between past and present, sanity and nightmare. A new chapter was beginning, a confrontation long postponed. The camera lingered on Ava's steadying breath and steely gaze, the diary clasped tightly as a fragile lifeline in trembling hands. The library, once sanctuary, had become the stage for a chilling reckoning, where forgotten truths whispered and shadows waited patiently. The scene dissolved into a muted tension, a silent breath held between the unmistakable pulse of dread and the fragile beacon of courage, as Ava prepared to confront the ghostly echoes of her own past. The flickering overhead lights cast long, jittering shadows across the library's labyrinthine shelves, a physical manifestation of the turmoil churning within Ava. She sat at the edge of a worn leather armchair, the diary resting heavily in her lap, the pages trembling beneath her fingers like fragile wings caught in an invisible storm. The air was thick with a silence that pressed against her very bones, broken only by the distant toll of the grandfather clock marking time with mocking precision. As she read further, the diary's entries began to shift unnervingly. Initial pages, once warm with nostalgic innocence, gave way to chilling updates. She had no memory of events that seemed to unfold in real time, predicting actions she'd performed mere hours before. Confusion tangled with dread, each new line a mirror reflecting truths concealed beneath layers of forgotten trauma. Her breath hitched as she encountered an entry revealing a conversation that had transpired that very day, described with unnerving accuracy and insidious detail. The sensation of being watched, of her most private moments manipulated, crept over her like a suffocating fog. A sharp knock at the library door snapped her attention away, a routine interruption, yet a reminder of the precarious boundary between her inner world and the external one. "Ava? Everything okay?" A soft voice called through the wooden door. It was Mark, the night janitor who had shown casual kindness in recent weeks. She hesitated, then found her voice thin but steady. "Yes, just a lot to process." The diary felt heavier still, as if infused with a dark weight pressing down, demanding surrender or defiance. In the quiet moments between breath and thought, Ava wrestled with the terrifying notion that this presence, this sinister guardian of her buried past, held knowledge far beyond human comprehension. She glanced to the window where rain began to fall softly, the droplets tapping out a rhythm like distant warnings on the glass. The library lights flickered precariously, shadows leaping anew with each sputter, bathing the space in an uneasy dance of light and darkness. Resilience stirred beneath the dread. She closed the diary gently, a small victory signaled by the faintest curve of her lips. "I won't let you define me," she whispered into the shifting shadows. Yet fear lingered, a spectral chill weaving through her resolve. The unseen force within the diary was not content to be ignored. A new entry appeared describing a near-future event neither she nor anyone else could anticipate. The lights died suddenly, plunging her into inky darkness. Silence wrapped coldly around her, a suffocating shroud pierced only by the thin, haunting whisper of a voice she dared not name. Ava's hand instinctively reached inside her cardigan pocket, clutching the diary close as her eyes strained to pierce the void. The fragile thread between reality and nightmare taut as ever, she braced herself for whatever truth awaited beyond the blackness. The scene held a suspended breath in the endless nightcap, turning the fragile balance of fear and courage, despair and defiance, in Ava's quiet battle against the ominous shadows of her unforgotten past. The library was shrouded in uneasy silence, save for the faint tapping of the grandfather clock marking time with relentless precision. Ava sat rigid at the small desk in the dim corner where the lingering glow of a single flickering lamp cast wavering shadows over the diary's yellowed pages. Her fingers trembled as they hovered above the ink, the words unfolding beneath her eyes like jagged shards of a fragmented mirror. The latest entry was unlike any she had seen before, dark, fragmented, pulsing with an urgency that stole her breath. It described the disappearance of a child, the haunting absence in a neighborhood that had long since buried its secrets. Details were brutally vivid. The cold darkness of a forgotten alley, the faint, desperate cries muffled beneath the hum of unnoticed lives. But the most piercing truth was the name Ava had tried to forget. Her heart thundered as suppressed memories clawed their way to the surface, peeling away the layers of denial and fog that had dulled her past. The diary was no longer a distant relic but something alive, a cruel oracle revealing shards of a truth she had buried deep within her psyche. Outside, the storm unleashed its fury, the rain lashing against the stained glass windows in wild torrents. The library lights sputtered, plunging her into darkness before greedily sputtering back to life, as if struggling against the encroaching abyss that seeped through the cracks of her mind. A whispered voice, barely audible yet unmistakably hers, echoed softly, "Remember. Face it." Ava's head dipped in silent surrender, the weight of the diary's revelations anchoring her to the cold wooden chair. She knew, with a chilling certainty, that the time for hiding was over. The shadows of her forgotten past were no longer content to lurk in silence. The diary's pages flipped themselves, revealing a new entry penned in the trembling script of her childhood, an account of witnessing the disappearance, a secret pact of silence made in fear and confusion. The room seemed to close around her, the walls breathing in tandem with her ragged breaths, alive with unspoken truths. Tears blurred her vision as she read, the fragile innocence of the child she once was colliding violently with the burden of the woman she had become. Betrayal of memory, loss of self, and the haunting specter of forgotten witnesses intertwined, wrapping around her like a suffocating shroud. Suddenly, the diary snapped shut with a definitive finality. The soft pulse of the lamp steadied, illuminating Ava's face, a canvas painted with pain, revelation, and the fragile beginnings of resolve. Her voice, barely more than a whisper, broke the heavy silence. "I can't run from this anymore." A cold gust blew through a cracked window, scattering loose papers like fallen leaves spiraling into the unknown. The grandfather clock chimed midnight, its toll resonant and unyielding, a somber reminder that time would not wait, and neither could she. The camera held on Ava's poised figure framed by trembling shadows, the diary a silent witness to the coming confrontation. The flickering light steadied briefly, as if acknowledging the turning tide, before the screen faded to black, an invitation to follow her descent into truth, madness, and ultimate reckoning. Ava's world had frayed to the point where the edges blurred indistinctly, like the faded words in her childhood diary, now almost illegible to her weary eyes. The library, once a refuge sheltering her from the harsher winds of life, seemed transformed into an oppressively silent crypt, the endless aisles suffocating chambers enclosing her in an invisible prison. The flicker of the overhead lights had devolved into a stuttering heartbeat above her head, casting sinister shadows that twitched with every moment. She sat huddled at the corner table, the diary open before her, pages slipping through her trembling fingers. The words no longer comforted. They twisted in her gut, revealing pieces of a past she had meticulously locked away and desperately tried to forget. Each entry tore at the fabric of reality she had sewn around her fragile mind. Outside the tall library windows, A relentless rain pounded steadily, drumming a morose dirge against the glass and washing away the distant town's faint lights, plunging her deeper into exile. The cold pressed in through the cracked seals, curling around her like spectral fingers, chilling her bones and numbing her resolve. Her breath hitched, lips parting in a silent plea that dissolved into the hollow hush. The diary's pages fluttered with an uncanny life, revealing details unremembered but chillingly precise events that she had locked from consciousness but which now smoldered in the blackened ashes of her memory. The grandfather clock tolled mournfully in the distance, each sonorous strike a weighty reminder of time slipping away, of moments lost and reckoning yet to come. It was a relentless metronome counting down to a confrontation Ava felt ill-prepared to face. In her fractured solitude, thoughts shattered as if struck by invisible shards, doubts clawing at her certainty, whispers of self-betrayal echoing in the vast corridors of her mind. Her identity, once a shield woven from quiet intellect and layers of guardedness, crumbled beneath the relentless assault of memories returning with spectral cruelty. Her gaze, glassy and distant, settled on the diary's spinny, a tarnished emblem of forgotten truths and unacknowledged fears. The room around her pulsed with a chilling electric tension, the flickering lights mirroring the unstable rhythm suffusing her mind and soul. Ava's voice emerged fragile, almost underwater, as she muttered, "Who am I if I cannot remember?" The silence swallowed her words and the library's vastness closed in like a coffin. The scene lingered on her trembling figure silhouetted against wavering shadows, caught in a slow spiral into darkness, despair, and disconnection, a soul unmoored, drifting toward an abyss where sanity and memory waged a desperate war. With one last flicker, the lights dimmed into darkness, the library swallowed in an embrace of shadows. Ava sat motionless, a ghost within walls built from forgotten stories, her descent complete, and the night swallowing her whole. The library had long since surrendered to the night, its windows mere dark voids to the storm-swept world beyond. Ava slumped into the worn armchair nestled between shelves overloaded with books, her frame small and fragile amidst the oppressive silence. Outside, the wind clawed at the panes, its keening howl weaving through the ancient timber and chilling every corner of the vast room. The cold seeped inside, a tangible frost that mirrored the emptiness hollowing her from within. The diary lay closed and forgotten on the floor beside her chair, its dust motes swirling like spectral fragments under the dull glow of a flickering lamp. The unstable light cast erratic shadows, trembling across Ivan's cracked walls as if the library itself breathed uneasily, haunted by unresolved reverberations of the past. Her breath came shallow and uneven, the rasp a ghostly whisper in the vast stillness. Every heartbeat throbbed with the heavy isolation pressing relentlessly upon her chest, a suffocating force eclipsing even the dim hope lingering faintly beneath her despair. The only other sound was the ticking of the old grandfather clock, each sonorous chime a hammer striking her fractured sense of self-time slipping away, dragging memories too distant and too sharp simultaneously. Ava's gaze drifted to the diary's weathered surface, in the flickering light, a symbol not merely of her childhood but of the secrets, the shadows she had buried deep beneath layers of denial. That dusty tome was the key to a past too dreadful to face yet impossible to ignore. The memory of the cruel teenage laughter, the echo of derision in the darkened library corridor, and the whispering voice from the shadows seemed to converge in a suffocating crescendo. Her fingers twitched helplessly as if reaching out into the void for something lost, but the darkness responded only with silence, cold and vast. An uncontrollable quiver passed through her lips, the faintest, almost mute, syllable escaping why. It was less a question than an invocation, cast into the void unheeded. Her head fell into her hands, trembling as the shadows crept closer, wrapping around her like the tedious despair of a long winter's night. The air thickened, heavy with stale breath and abandoned hopes. A single tear carved a glistening path down her cheek, cold as the autumn rain pattering against the windowpane. The diary, silent and unread, seemed to whisper a mournful lullaby, summoning a chorus of forgotten fears and forgotten truths. The library clock struck 12, its toll echoing through the empty halls like the bell of a funeral. Time marked itself with cruel precision, each chime a tally against her willpower. Ava's body stilled, stretched rigid with the weight of surrender, her spirit unraveling thread by fragile thread. The room dissolved into pure stillness, no breath, no light, no hope, only the relentless pulse of darkness embracing everything. The scene faded with Ava's silhouette swallowed by shadow, the final frame lingering on the root of a withered fern pressed beneath the cracked window, a symbol of life faded, abandoned, and desperately clinging to the last light before night claimed all. Silence reigned, absolute and merciless, as the screen turned to black. The suffocating darkness of the library's attic space pressed in on Ava like a physical weight, the air stale and thick with the dust of forgotten memories. She sat motionless on the floor, the diary clasped tightly to her chest, its cracked leather cover a cold comfort against the chilling void spreading inside her. Outside, the storm raged, wind howling through broken panes and rain pelting the roof with relentless fury, a tempest mirroring the turmoil tearing through her soul. Her breath came in shallow gasps, a fragile cadence barely audible over the thunder's distant roar. Her mind teetered on the edge of fragmentation, swirling images and half-remembered shadows dancing just beyond the reach of clarity. Every moment seemed stretched taut with unbearable tension, a silence pregnant with something unspoken, waiting to break. She traced the worn edges of the diary, fingers trembling with a desperate longing for answers and a growing dread of what those answers might reveal. The flickering light bulb overhead sputtered, casting intermittent glimmers on the faded ink, the shadows twisting and recoiling as if alive and watching. Suddenly, a faint sound pierced the darkness, the soft, haunting melody of a lullaby, a breath of music carried on a whisper through the storm. Ava's eyes snapped open. The unexpected sound stirred a flicker of recognition deep within her chest, a fragile thread anchoring her to a distant, gentler time. The melody sailed through the heavy air, echoing from the shadows of the attic's forgotten corners, weaving a delicate tapestry of sorrow and hope. Her trembling lips parted in a whisper, joining the spectral song, the music a fragile lifeline pulling her from the abyss. A single tear traced a slow path down her cheek, glistening in the shaky light as the diary slipped from her grasp, falling open to a page she had not noticed before. The words scrawled there were terse but urgent. A note from herself, hidden among the past, remember who you are. The truth is waiting. The room seemed to inhale, the oppressive atmosphere lifting just enough to allow a quiet breath of possibility. Ava's gaze lingered on the faded script, a small beacon amid the darkness, a silent promise of revelation and redemption. Rising unsteadily to her feet, she held the diary close again, the weight now lighter, tempered by the glow of fragile hope. The storm outside began to abate, its furious cries softening to a mournful lull, the first hints of dawn filtering through the grime-covered windows. The camera pulled back slowly, framing Ava silhouetted against the faint gleam of morning light, a figure poised between despair and renewal, about to embark on a journey through the shadows toward truth. The scene settled on the subtle flicker of the library's lights stabilizing, the grandfather clock's pendulum swinging steadily in time, a rhythm promising inevitable reckoning and the fragile dawn of understanding. The diary closed softly, a gentle whisper in the stillness, as Ava stepped forward into the uncertain light of her past and, possibly, her salvation. A faint dawn blurred the horizon behind the rain-streaked windows of the library, washing the dimly lit space in a muted, amber hue. The oppressive shadows that had clung to the corners the night before now seemed to retreat, replaced by a fragile yet persistent glow. Ava sat quietly at the central table, the ancient diary closed before her, its worn leather cover catching the soft sunlight filtering through the cracks in the glass. Her breath was slow, deliberate, as if she were trying to coax life back into a body long held hostage by shadows. The air was thick, tinged with the scent of damp paper, dust, and something new, something like hope dawning within her. Her fingers hovered over the cover for a moment, trembling with hesitation but also a whisper of resolve. Ava reached out with a tentative gesture, her fingertips brushing the cold, cracked leather, feeling its rough texture beneath her skin. The moment was quiet, intimate, an act of gentle defiance against the darkness that had threatened to consume her. The flickering light bulb overhead finally steadied, casting a warm, comforting glow across the room like an unspoken promise. The ancient clock in the corner chimed softly, a delicate reminder that time was moving forward, slow, relentless, but never enough to undo the past. Ava closed her eyes briefly, allowing herself to breathe in that calm, as if absorbing the first real peace she'd known in what felt like an eternity. She looked again at the diary, but this time, her gaze lingered on it with quiet admiration, an object that had once been her tormentor and was now poised to become her salvation. Her lips trembled into a faint, uncertain smile, the kind that hinted at the first revelations of forgiveness and understanding slipping quietly into her consciousness. In that fragile moment, she recalled the words from the cryptic note she had found, "Remember who you are. The truth is waiting." Her heart fluttered with a mixture of fear and hope. She clasped her hands before her, opening her inner eyes to possibilities she had long suppressed. The dim light grew brighter, bathing the room in a soft, golden hue, gradually dissolving the shadows, painting the space with hues of dawn. Outside, the rain had slowed, the clouds parting to reveal the faint glow of sunlight filtering through remnants of storm. Birds started to sing distant melodies, as if welcoming her back to herself. Ava's fingers brushed against the diary once more, this time with purpose, a silent vow, acknowledgement that she was ready to confront, to accept, to heal. The camera panned out slowly, capturing her silhouette against the awakening sun, a symbol of fragile rebirth. The library, once a prison of silence and shadows, now hummed softly with quiet hope, a sanctuary still haunted but now whispering truths. In that slowly blooming light, she finally understood that healing was not an immediate leap but a series of small steps, each one a testament that even in darkness, change was treacherously possible, waiting patiently for the moment to unfold. The first light of dawn seeped through the stained glass windows of the library, casting muted, fractured colors across cluttered shelves and the worn wooden floors. Ava, standing amidst the softly chattering shadows of the awakening space, clutched the diary close, every inch imbued with significance. The night's ordeal had left her trembling, yet her posture had begun to shift, a quiet assertion of resolve emerging from the depths of her earlier despair. Her hands, no longer trembling in fear, moved with a deliberate purpose. She opened the diary again, this time with a steady, purposeful gaze. The pages before her were not mere ink and paper, but a corridor to her buried memories, and she was determined to walk through it. The flickering lights above steadied into a gentle hum, as if acknowledging her awakening strength. She traced a finger along the inked words. Their familiar scent evoked a faded era of innocence. Her eyes, now clear and fierce, flicked across the pages, taking in details she had long resisted, names, places, whispers of her childhood that shimmered like ghostly reflections on dark water. Ava's voice, husky yet resolute, broke the silence. "I won't let this define me anymore." A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, stirring a cascade of loose papers and ancient shadows, while the old grandfather clock tolled softly, its slow, deliberate chimes echoing through the room, each a reminder that the passage of time was her ally, not her enemy. She took a step forward, her silhouette a stark contrast against the rising light, symbolizing her journey from shadow to dawn. In her hand, she held a fragile, crumpled note, her own words, long lost, yet suddenly resurfacing like a final key to her pain and redemption. She unfolded it slowly, the paper trembling as if alive with past energy, and read her own handwriting. "Face what you fear. The truth will set you free." The words shimmered in her mind and heart, igniting a spark that had long lain dormant. A tear, bright and real, slid down her cheek, but it was no longer a sign of weakness. It was an acknowledgement of the pain endured, and a toast to the courage newly stirred. Ava's gaze lifted to the window, where the first rays of sunlight pierced through the lingering shadows, illuminating her face the look of someone who had touched the depths of darkness and emerged with the unspoken vow to forge her own light. The camera lingered on her silhouette against the dawn, a testament to transformation not yet complete, but undeniably begun. In that moment, a fragile peace took root, whispering softly that the true challenge was over, and the journey toward healing had silently been set in motion. The first light of dawn seeped through the cracked, dust-laden windows of the library, casting a warm, golden glow that softened the heavy shadows of unresolved fears. Ava stood at the heart of the room, the ancient diary now closed gently in her trembling hands. Though her hands still shook, her gaze was steadier, brighter, an unspoken testament to the awakening she had fought so fiercely to attain. The heavy air shimmered with newfound clarity, a fragile dawn after long darkness. The flickering lights above steadied, casting a steady glow that bathed the space in a reassuring warmth. Outside, the storm had subsided, leaving the air crisp and still, as if nature itself had paused in silent witness of her transformation. Ava's pulse thrummed with a tempered resolve as she took a deliberate step forward, each movement imbued with purpose. The shadows on the shelves behind her receded slightly, bowing to the emergence of her inner strength, a quiet, powerful defiance against the darkness that once threatened to consume her. Her eyes caught the glint of the now-closed diary resting on the table, a symbol of what she had faced and conquered. A faint, self-assured smile touched her lips as she looked at it. "I am more than my past," she whispered, voice steady and resolute. "The truth is not a chain, but a ladder." The old grandfather clock's gentle chime echoed softly in the awakening silence, marking the passage into a new chapter not just of the library, but of her life. The moment was poised on the cusp of finality, yet pulsed with the promise of ongoing rebirth. Her hand reached out, not to reopen the diary, but to place it with reverence on the shelf, an act of acknowledgement, acceptance, and ultimate liberation. The camera lingers on her face, calm and serene, eyes shining with the clarity of a soul that has seen its darkness without succumbing. Ava stepped back, the sunlight spilling in more boldly now, bathing her in a luminous embrace. She turned her gaze outward, toward the horizon, a symbol of endless possibilities where light and shadow dance in perpetual harmony. The scene held a portrait of emergent strength, symbolized by the awakening dawn before fading gently into a quiet, contemplative silence. An unspoken vow lingered in the air. She had crossed a threshold, and through that passage, found her peace. The first light of dawn filtered softly through the library's tall windows, casting gentle golden beams across the quiet aisles. The space, once a battleground of shadows and hidden fears, now seemed to breathe with a quiet serenity. Ava sat at a small wooden table near the window, the closed diary resting peacefully before Harriet's battered cover, a silent testament to her arduous journey. Her hands, no longer trembling, rested gently in her lap, palms open in a gesture of surrender and acceptance. The air was filled with a stillness that spoke of peace, Hardwin, a fragile miracle born from nights of darkness and terror. Outside, the world stirred softly. A faint breeze stirred the edges of her coat, whispering promises of renewal. Her gaze lingered on the horizon where distant clouds dissolved into morning light, a symbol of transition, of hope reborn. Ava's eyes softened as she gazed at the window, her reflection shimmering faintly in the glass. Behind her, the shadows receded, no longer holding dominion over her spirit. She had faced the monstrous unknown within her childhood diary, stared into the abyss of her repressed memories, and emerged with a heart tempered by the fires of truth. In her mind, the image of the journal's last cryptic message lingered, "Remember who you are. The truth will set you free." With a slow, deep breath, she confirmed that she was no longer the frightened woman hiding behind layers of silence. She was resilient, brave enough to face her past, to reclaim her story. Her fingers gently brushed the edge of the closed diary, a faint, almost tender smile curling her lips. It was a quiet acknowledgement. The darkness had not consumed her, but sculpted her into someone stronger. The shadows, once her tormentors, now lay behind, harassed by her courage, illuminated by the dawn. Ava leaned back in her chair, eyes closing for a moment, absorbing the warmth of the morning light, the steady, reassuring rhythm of life continuing beyond the windows. The library, once a prison of shadows, now radiated a tranquil glow, a sanctuary of healing. As the camera slowly pulled back, capturing her silhouette bathed in soft light, her figure gradually merged with the gentle dawn outside. The scene lingered on her peaceful face, a testament to the quiet triumph over fears once insurmountable. In this silence, a profound truth settled, that within every shadow, there was a flicker of light waiting to be rediscovered, a chance to begin anew. The dawn spilled softly through the library's windows, illuminating the space with a gentle, golden hue. Ava sat by the large arched window, the closed diary resting on her lap, a symbol of her journey and the darkness she had courageously faced. Her fingers brushed the worn cover, feeling the textured leather beneath her fingertips, both a relic of her past and a vessel of her resilience. The room was hushed, a quiet sanctuary bathed in morning light. Outside, the world stirred softly, leaves shimmering in the breeze, carrying the scent of awakening. The storm that once threatened to swallow her whole had abated, leaving behind a sky streaked with clouds softened by dawn, as if nature itself was mourning what had been lost, a necessary passing before renewal. Ava's gaze drifted out, beyond the glass, to where the distant town's rooftops reached into the sky. She saw herself reflected in the glass, a woman who had stared into terror's abyss and returned with a quiet, unyielding strength. Her eyes, once haunted by shadows, now sparkled with a peaceful resolve, a testament to a battle fought and won. In her hand, she held a single, delicate flower she had found pressed flat in the diary, its petals fragile yet resilient, a perfect symbol of her own battered but unbroken spirit. She gently pressed her fingertips to it, a silent acknowledgement of growth, of forgiveness, of a life reclaimed. The camera zoomed in slowly, capturing her face. Her features softened, the lines of worry smoothed by time and understanding. A faint, compassionate smile curved her lips as she closed her eyes for a moment, breathing in the warm morning air, the scent of possibility filling her lungs. Within her, a deep sigh of release echoed, a gentle crescendo that centered her. Minutes stretched eloquently as the scene paused, bathing her in a cocoon of stillness, a silent celebration of the darkest nights overcome. The final shot lingered on her serene profile against a backdrop of light, her silhouette a lighthouse guiding her through unknown waters towards a horizon glowing with hope and healing. The soothing rhythm of the dawn lingered as the screen slowly faded to a cinematic silence, a poetic pause that carries the weight of peace, belonging, and the promise of new beginnings. The morning sunlight poured softly through the library's tall windows, its golden glow spilling across the quiet aisles like a gentle balm. Ava sat by the window, her gaze distant yet peaceful, cradling the closed diary in her lap, a final relic of her arduous journey into the depths of her buried past. The air was thick with a silent stillness, an unspoken acknowledgement that she had crossed a threshold and emerged transformed. Outside, the world was awakening. Birdsong fluttered in the air, and the distant hum of life grew into a chorus of renewal. The storm that once threatened to drown her both metaphorically and literally had passed. Now, the dawn cast light not just on her surroundings but deep within her, illuminating the corridors of her soul bathed in understanding and peace. Her fingers traced the diary's smooth cover, a relic worn but now a symbol of resilience. The shadows and whispers from the past receded like the tide retreating from the shoreline, silent, inevitable, and accepting of the new day. She looked at the window, catching her reflection, the face of a woman who had stared into the abyss and had come back whole. A faint smile touched her lips, a quiet, knowing smile, the first true smile she had worn in years. It was a gesture of forgiveness, of release, and of a life finally reclaimed from shadows. Her eyes shimmered with unspoken gratitude, a luminous reflection of the dawn's healing light. The camera slowly pulled back, framing her silhouette against the radiant morning. The library, once a vessel of darkness, shimmered in the new light, its walls now whispering stories of hope and transformation. The silent space became a sanctuary of peace, a testament to the power of facing fears and the resilience that emerges from embracing even the darkest truths. As the screen gently faded to a still shot of her sitting quietly by the window, a single tear traced down her cheek, a symbol of how far she had traveled and how much she had ultimately forgave and understood. The moment lingered, serene and infinite, capturing the essence of peace, an enduring tribute to the dawn of self-acceptance and the enduring bloom of hope. Have you ever doubted your memories? Share your thoughts below.